It's a tool like many others I use in my daily life. Oh, we got some music.
I don't know why.
It's the AI.
Maybe someone is listening to us.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Bravo.
Disconnect the new revolution. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Simone Marchetti, editorial director of Vanity Fair Europe, and I'm very happy, proud, and I have to say very curious to be here with Adam Mosseri, head of Instagram, now part of Meta. First of all, thank you very much for joining Vanity Fair. I would like to go straight to the questions.
Please,
because
yes.
they are, I think, important, and I'm very curious about your point of views, your experience, and also your vision for the future, not only of Instagram, but the whole culture. So, my first question is, what is the best thing you have done for Instagram so far?
Me, personally? Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I have been with Meta for 16 or 17 years now, and I worked on the Facebook app for the first 10. And then I've been working on Instagram for the last 6 or 7. I think that one of the things that is difficult but important is evolving the platform forward. Because the thing that happens to platforms like ours is that they get big and then they slow down and the world changes and what they do becomes less relevant, and then they become slowly but surely less and less relevant every year. And so you need to evolve or adapt, or you slowly die. The flip side is when we change things on Instagram, it makes people very frustrated, right? People get used to the things as they are, that makes sense. And when we change things, it can be annoying at times. And so the thing that I'm probably most proud of over my 6 or 7 years here is that I think I've managed to help the platform with my team evolve as the world has changed, right? If we look at how people use Instagram today, it's very different than how they used it 5 years ago, and even more different than 10 years ago. There's, the primary way people share on Instagram is actually through DMs and text, and people don't think of it that way. The primary thing that people view on Instagram is actually videos. But when people think of Instagram, they think of a feed of square photos. And so I think I've helped the product adapt and stay relevant, or even grow, in a world that is changing increasingly quickly. It's sometimes maybe too fast, and I've gotten a lot of negative feedback about that. But I'd rather move too fast and have to slow down every once in a while than move too slow and then just become irrelevant.
Then there's another question that is one of my favorite. It's very easy to people to speak about their successes, or what went well, or what was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But one of the things that define us more are mistakes.
Absolutely.
What was your favorite mistake?
My favorite mistake?
The one that really helped you to realize something.
I've made so many mistakes.
I'm talking about Instagram, of course.
No, I know. I've made a lot of mistakes in life, but also a lot of them in Instagram. I mean, so we have short video on Instagram, we call it Reels. And we started working on Reels in maybe, in 2018. And the first version was built into the Stories product, right? So the circles at the top. And so we did that because Stories was growing and people loved Stories, and we thought putting Reels inside of Stories would lean on that momentum, but it didn't work at all, completely failed. Because Stories are for friend content, and most of them people don't even see, and it just was not a strong foundation on which to build a new product. And we lost 9 months, maybe even a year, trying to make it work. And in the end, we pivoted to the version we have today, which is more based on feed and having its own dedicated tab and all these other things that just made it work. And if we had been a year ahead, I think the world would be very different for us right now, because TikTok exploded in 2020 with COVID-19 and a bunch of people spending much more time at home and on their phones, and we didn't have a compelling offering. And that was obviously a horrible thing, a pandemic, lots of people suffered all around the world, but it also changed a lot of industries. And for us, it really accelerated this shift to video. And my lesson from losing that time and from not getting caught, we would say, out of position, is how important it is to not only move quickly, but to be ready for anything. Because the world is gonna surprise you and you're gonna have to adapt. And if you can adapt quickly, and if you can adapt more quickly than the competition, that can be as important as what it is that you build in the first place. And I wish I didn't make that mistake. Like I wish I didn't make a lot of the mistakes that I've made. But that one probably shaped how I manage Instagram now more than anything else I can think of right now.
You are saying that be ready for anything. And I'm thinking, I don't know why, but I'm thinking of young kids who should be ready for anything on social media. And I'm thinking of one of the show that everyone is looking now as seen on Netflix, Adolescence. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
And I know that you are a father of 3 kids. So my question is how we can educate teenagers in social media and how important is an important concern today. You have children. So when do you think is the right time for kids to get their first phones?
I think it depends on the kid. So, I mean, look, we all have our own part to play. The platforms need to do what they can to keep kids safe. The phone manufacturers and the operating systems have a bunch of things they can do to help with children's safety. Government has a role to play. Schools have a role to play. But one of the most important is parents, because nobody knows a kid's needs better than their parent does. I have 3 boys, so adolescence was really hard for me because it's about the risks around young boys. And mine are younger, they're 9, 7, and about to be 5. But, it's like 9 is getting close to 13, some sort of same skinny, awkward, kid kind of energy. So definitely that one hit me hard. But I don't think the age for each of them is going to be the same. One of them is more mature than the other. So maybe he should get a phone earlier because I trust him more to be more careful and be more restrained than another one who's a little bit more wild. But the government can't know that. A tech company can't know that. Only a parent can know that. So I think it'll depend on the kid. In general, that seems to be happening younger and younger. I mean, you can't even use Instagram until you're 13 anywhere in the world. But we see kids regularly getting phones before that now. But I think you've got to understand the individual kid's needs and then figure out not just when they get the phone, but what they get access to on the phone. Right? Because you can have a phone and just say, look, you can't download any apps. You can just text mom and dad, and I can control your contacts, and you can call us. And that's a different risk profile than you can have a phone and you can download any app you want and you can use the whole internet, and I'm not ever going to look at it. So again, the details are very important.
And going back to the question, how do you teach a child or a teen to use social media responsibly and to cope with haters, bullying, and harassment?
Yeah. So I think the answer for a platform like Instagram is different than the answer for a parent.
Yeah. Give me both point of views.
So for a platform, we have to do 2 things. We have to try to prevent harassment and bullying from happening in the first place. There's rules about what the line is that defines harassment, and if we see it, we take it down. But it's not just about content being taken down, because there you're also censoring somebody else. It's also about the incentives. It's about what posts you value highly in ranking, what comments you bubble to the top of the list, what the privacy settings are. There's lots of ways to try and reduce the exposure that young people have to bullying and harassment. So you want to stop as much as you can, but you also have to be honest that some is going to get through no matter what. Bullying is as old as people, right? Like I was bullied as a kid. I think it's hard to think of a time before teens or kids teased each other. So you also need to build tools to allow the targets of bullying to protect themselves and to take some power back. So one of my favorite features we launched is called Restrict. Do you know Restrict?
Yeah.
So Restrict was literally inspired by conversations with teens about bullying online. And we said, why don't you just block someone who's harassing you? And they said, well, two reasons. One, I need to know what they're saying because I need to defend myself to my friends when I go to school. And fear of escalation, because if I block you, you can tell, because all of a sudden it looks like I'm not on Instagram and you know I'm still on Instagram. And so what Restrict allows you to do is essentially block them without them knowing. So if you comment on my post, nobody can see it, but it looks to you like they can see it. And when you message me, I can read it without sending a red receipt back to you. A series of other things. Ways of giving a team some tools to take some power back. So we have to do both. We have to get better at both. Preventing as much as we can and giving teens tools to protect themselves in the event that some inevitable harassment does happen. For a parent, it's about education. It's about making sure you have conversations with your teens about the risks, about understanding identity. Do you know who's who? About being thoughtful and intentional about what you share on the platform or whether you share at all. And also, I think just about, this is not only about bullying, but related, is just about how much exposure you have. So how much time do you spend on the platform, right? Like if you set a limit, 20 minutes per day, something like that, that gives you less exposure than if you have no limit at all, for instance. Now again, so for each teen, what's best will be different. But I think parents, it's about education and talking to them about those types of ideas. Knowing who's who, being careful about what you post, setting boundaries and limits, whatever those might be, I think are incredibly important conversations to have with your kids.
Conversation is a key with teens, of course, and with families. But another key is adults.
Yeah.
How do we teach adults to use technology in a more conscious and informed way?
That's a big question.
I know.
There's lots of ways to think about that.
You have a big role.
I do. I mean, on Instagram, I think we want to be careful because on one hand, we want to make sure we're building a safe platform. We want to build a platform that inspires creativity and connects people. On the other hand, we want to make sure we're not playing too strong a role. We don't want to tell people what to think or what to read. We want that to be your decision as an adult. You can decide who you want to follow. You can decide what you want your Instagram experience to be like. Your experience is probably pretty different than mine. So the question is, where on that spectrum do we want to be? So some of the stuff is not as direct. You know, the question is like, what gets rewarded on Instagram? Because anything that gets the most reach is going to teach people to post more of it. Those are, about incentives. So indirectly, we, I think, influence people based on what works and what doesn't, based on ranking and other parts of the product, and we're incentivizing and disincentivizing different behaviors. We have to be very conscious about that. But then there's more direct ways. Like I think it's really good for people to know how much time they spend, because it's a bit of a mirror. And maybe you like what you see, or maybe you don't like what you see, right? So we've built tools to be able to not only see how much time you spent, but to set reminders or limits. If I open my phone and you open your phone right now, maybe we can look at not even Instagram, but just for the whole app, the whole phone. How much time do you spend on your phone per day?
Yeah.
I think you should feel good about that number. And if you don't, you should figure out a way to try and make some changes. So I think with adults, for platforms and for phones, it's more about giving people good information so that they can be aware of how they use the platform or the phone or the technology, and then make changes to make sure they feel good about those decisions.
One of the biggest vulnerabilities of social media, including Instagram, is the spread of fake news and the political manipulation of content. How, again, can we address that without putting democracies at risk?
I think it's a couple different things. So on the more immediate answer and then the broader answer. The more immediate thing is we're now moving from third-party fact checkers to community notes. I feel really good about this because third-party fact checkers, I actually worked on the first version for Facebook. I built that initial program back in 2017. And one of the challenges was scaling. Could you have enough coverage and could you react quickly enough? Because information flies so quickly. And I think that community notes are going to be a much more scalable solution over the long run. And we didn't invent them, but I think when someone has a better idea, it's good to acknowledge it and adopt it. It's still early, so it's not proven, but I have much more trust in that system working internationally at scale and quickly than I did ever with the third-party fact-checking system. So I'm hoping that'll work because you have people who are trusted and they vote on each other's things, and you can see people where there's consensus. You can't just go in and say whatever you want on anything. And then you can provide context for people to make their own informed decisions about what to believe and what not to believe. So that's the short term. In the long term, though, I think we're headed to a world where it's much more difficult to tell what's real and what's not. And that's bigger than social media. That's about the internet, that's about AI, that's about generative AI. You know, when you make images on Instagram that are AI generated, we mark them as such. And you know, so you make sure everyone knows what they're seeing, you label it appropriately. But there's lots of other platforms out there where you can make images and videos. And what you can make today wasn't possible a year ago, and it'll be even wilder in another year. So I think a world where people focus not just on the information, but on who says it is where we're going. Because it's not going to be, is this image real or not in 5 years or 10 years? It's going to be hard to tell. But it's going to be, do you trust the person who's sharing it? And so it's going to be more and more important for people to be skeptical and conscious about who they're hearing content from and whether or not to trust it. And then it's on the platforms to try to make sure they do all they can to not only mark things that are generated as generated or fake as fake or whatever it might be, but also to give you good information about who's posting it, so then you can decide whether or not to trust them. Because we're moving to a world where you're going to be able to take a photo of me and a video of you, and we can just make it look like it was me doing all the things that you did and said with my voice and your accent. That's happening to us one way or the other.
I'm going to ask you about AI later, but I have another question before. Today, how can a young person use Instagram in the best way possible to pursue their dreams? So it's about, of course, creation.
Yeah.
Can you give me some example how?
I think it might be about creation. I mean, for us, we love to support creatives and creativity. But teens, young people, they're exploring their identities. They're figuring out who they are. And one of the things that Instagram can, I think, help with is do just that, to explore your interests, right? Maybe you're passionate about, fashion or pottery or grammar or, football, whatever it might be. Instagram is a great way for people to explore those interests. My eldest is really into football, which we call soccer in the US. And so he I'll show him videos of, skills of dribbling techniques and things to learn. My middle one is really into music. So when he's older, I'm sure I'll show him videos about, educational, how to play guitar, how to play drums, right? I think when you're young, they're too young to use Instagram, but when they're older, they'll use Instagram now. I just show them videos from other places. I think one of the most effective things we can do is help you explore your interests so you can figure out what your dreams might be, because you don't necessarily know when you're 13 or 15 or 16.
No, you don't.
Now, if you do, if you're lucky enough, and we can help you pursue those dreams by, expressing it, especially if it's a creative dream, if it's art or music or fashion or makeup or whatever it is, and we can help you express your creativity and refine your point of view, and then that's great. But I think for young people, it's probably less about sharing, which also comes with much more risk, than it is about exploring your interests, particularly educational interests.
I must say that exploring your interests is was one of the greatest revolution of Instagram. On the other side, the algorithm today rewards posts that get widely shared. Doesn't that risk fueling the spread of sensitive content?
It could. In practice on Instagram, it doesn't seem to, because the way you share on Instagram primarily is you share a message with a friend, which is different than how you share on Facebook or Twitter or other platforms where you share with everybody. And if you think about the nature of the content that you want to yell from a rooftop at all 100 people who follow you, versus the nature of content you would send in a message to your best friend, they're very different. And so what we see in terms of what's shared on Instagram is it's things like funny videos. Here's a stand-up comic doing a bit, I know my brother's gonna laugh out loud. Or other types of interest content. My sister is a furniture designer who's interested in architecture and a lighting designer. She lives in Berlin, so I'll send her, furniture or interior designs, because and then we talk about it. Which is it. Whereas if I was sharing it with everybody, here's something I found you all should know about, it's much more likely to be sensational or politics or sensitive, which, by the way, might be okay. Sometimes politics, sensitive content are important. But in general, in terms of what's shareable on Instagram, it biases more towards things, because sharing means something very different on Instagram, that I think are much less risky. That doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of risk. Of course there is. There's 2 billion people on the platform and they share all sorts of things. So that's the core. But then you also have to assume that mistakes happen, right? Bad content will get a lot of reach sometimes. And so we have a whole teams of people working on trying to identify problems, and then either, if it's unsafe, taking the content off the platform entirely, or if it's not unsafe but it's sensitive or there's more risk, making sure we don't recommend it and we don't amplify it. So we don't allow nudity. If something is really risque, we allow it, we don't take it down, but we won't recommend it. We won't show it to people who do not follow that account that posted it. And so that list of problems or sensitive content types grows every year, and we get better and better at identifying those risks and trying to address them.
You were mentioning AI before. My question is, what's your take on the explosion of AI and the risks it poses when it comes to content creation?
So I think there's a lot of excitement about AI right now, but it is really a set of technologies which is different than use cases or products. I think in the short term, so this year, the next few years, it's much more of a tool, not in the context of content creation, to help creators make more content or to improve their content. I use it to edit text that I write, or summarize things that I want to read, or edit photos and videos. The same way I use Photoshop and Instagram editor and writing tools to do the work that I do. But I think the risk is that it's going to become much harder to know what's real. Because as AI gets better and better at fabricating content, you're going to be able to make it look like anybody said or did anything. And I think we will make sure on our part, anything we know is AI will be labeled as such, but some is going to slip through the cracks because a lot of other companies are going to make tools that don't do the same or don't adhere to the same standards. And so I think it's going to become much more important that people consider not only how realistic the thing is that they are seeing or reading is, but how much they trust the person who's saying it. This idea of trust and voice is going to become, I think, really critical for us to all be cognizant of. The same way, as when we grew up, we learned to be critical readers, but that was more about what was being said or what was being shown. Now it's going to be about, to be a critical reader in the future, it's going to be about also paying a lot of attention to who's saying it and why they might be saying it.
My last question maybe is the more difficult, but today Meta is facing a trial, is starting a trial in the US, it's everywhere in the news.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, how do you envision the future of social media and the future of Instagram?
So separate from the trial, because I can't speak to that because I'm going to be testifying in a few weeks. I think the thing is, look, the core needs that social media tries to meet are consistent, right? We like to connect with other people. We like to explore our interests and entertain ourselves. So I've tried to make sure that as Instagram evolves, we stay true to those ideas. But how we do that is going to change, right? So, we've moved from posting in feed to posting in stories to posting in messages. We've moved from square photos to, immersive videos with sound and graphics. But the core needs to connect and to explore your interests have stayed the same. In the future, I think it's going to change more. And I think the biggest change in the next 10 years is going to be, we're not going to be so like our attention for these jobs and others is not going to be so focused on just the mobile phone. I think we're going to end up in a place where, we use mobile phones, they're not going away, but they're going to be probably still strong for some of the use cases like entertaining. But I think particularly connecting with people, conversations, calls, videos, I think we're going to move to a place where some of those use cases move to something that looks more like these. By the way, yours look a little bit like mine. I like yours. And we're working on this right now with the long-term, more out there glasses that we've shown, but also with our collaboration with Luxottica and Ray-Ban Metas. Those are from the two opposite sides. One is like the crazy technical future that's like $10,000 a pair, and one is doesn't even have a screen and is just, voice and camera. But they're going to meet in the middle. And I don't know if that's going to be in 3 years or 5 years or 7 years or 10. But when they do, I think it's going to change a lot about how we connect with other people. And I think Instagram and platforms like it are going to have to figure out, what does that mean for not, don't build something that has nothing to do with what you do, but what does that mean in a world where you don't spend all your time on a small glowing rectangle, but you're using other devices, maybe not just glasses, maybe something on your wrist, to access technology.
Okay, so we will be aware of glasses.
Glasses, I think
and body technologies.
It's a while. Yeah. Well, I mean, so for me, I don't know if you've tried the Ray-Ban Metas, but
yeah, I did.
for me, my favorite feature by far is not the cameras. People always think of it as cameras. For me, it's the speakers and the microphone. I listen to books. I take phone calls. I listen to a lot of podcasts. It allows me to, the subway to work, consume content in a way that I wouldn't otherwise. So I don't know. We'll see.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.